loves you. Truly, the real you loves you. Truly, the real you loves you. Truly, the real you loves you. Truly.
All right. Truly, the real you loves you. Truly, truly, I say unto you today that the real you loves you. And there's a reason why. Because the real you, now, I'm talking about the real you. I'm not talking about the you that you made or the me that I made, but I'm talking about that which God created, the real you. That real you indeed loves you because the real you is love. Just let that sink in for a minute. The real you is love. Who I really am, I am love. Everyone that is born of love is born of reality. Boy, that's a great place to start today's session. Hi, my name is Oliver. We're here for another time uh, where we are taking another step in our transformation. We're taking another step in our awakening. We're taking another step in our conscious awareness being expanded. And I'm delighted to be your temporary host, your temporary guide, your temporary teacher, your temporary coach, whatever you want to label it. It's not that important. What's most important is that I am in you and you are in me and we are one. That's what's most important. And thank you so much for being here. Today we will explore, we will investigate, we will do commentary on workbook lesson 238. Workbook lesson 238 out of this Jesus provided course that we call A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles. And it's not the miracles that we traditionally think of when we think of a miracle. But what the course here is teaching is it is a course in healing. This is a course in mind training, a course in healing. This is a course in awakening. This is a course in true perception. And we are on day 238 or workbook lesson 238. We've been going at this for over 250 or 60 days. And there are another 160, 40, 50, 60 lessons left before we get to the end of the year. And even before we get to the end of the year, it's not the end of our evolution. It's not the end of our awakening. It's just the beginning. And we like to thank Truly Foundation for being the provider of these advanced teachings. And Truly Foundation is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to the sharing of advanced teachings for the sole purpose of waking up humanity to come to know its true identification as oneness. And so today's lesson is another it is another step up this ladder that is endless this upward spiral that we keep finding ourselves to be a part of, this grand awakening, this grand awareness of the reality of who we are and what our purpose is. And so today we're going to take this thought, this one thought of God, and add it to what we've already planted, what we've already have examined, what we have already embraced, what we have already invited, what we have already shared. We add but another dose to our certainty of who we are. And so today's thought, again, workbook lesson 238, and this is just a thought that we're going to use to further build our perception about ourselves and about every living thing. It's coming from a divine point of view. And so the thought is, on my decision, all happiness rest. The word used here is salvation. But I have already mentioned that salvation, happiness, they are one and the same. What God purposed for us, what is most important to God, is your happiness, is your direct experience of the love that we all share. Here, in mostly religious communities, we use the word salvation, but that word has taken on so many negative connotation. I like happiness. They are synonymous. And the one thing about it here is that we learned from the section here that says what is salvation or what is happiness. The opening statement says that, and I like to use happiness. Happiness is a promise. Salvation is a promise that is made by God, that all of us would eventually find our way to God at last, find our way to love at last, to truth at last, find our way to reality at last. And it may be at the last that we do that, but regardless, God promised that every human, everything that God created, which is every human, in the sense that when God created us, he didn't create us as humans. He created us as himself. The making of humanity. I'm not gonna say that because this might cause us to not pay attention. But the making of humanity was our idea. It was a God idea. God created us before the foundation of the world. Likened to himself, timeless and formless. And we took the privilege and the freedom to go on a journey called prodigal, to see if there's anything outside of what God created. And we created a world. And here we are. We made bodies, and here we are. Only to be here in these bodies looking for what? Looking for ourselves, looking for love, looking for happiness and joy and peace. Like it's been lost. It hasn't been lost, it's just been forgotten. It had just been layered over and covered over with this idea of what a separated self, an individuated body, mind, self, a limited self. We gave up the reality of being infinite beings to experience to have a what finite experience, a limited experience called humanity. But even in that, we have not lost the reality of who we are. We still remain as God created us, as innocent and whole and loving and divine and eternal. Yes, yes. So happiness is a promise. It is God's promise. What? God promised that all of us will eventually wake up to the truth of who we are and realize that we are indeed the holy home of God. Even having an awareness of a body and a social security number. But in reality, there is but the one. And we all share in that oneness. And that is the message. That is the healing message. That is the reality. That is the download. That's the revelation. That is able to heal us from all our pain and suffering. And so today's idea that on our decision, all that happiness, all that salvation rests. In other words, God entrusted us to make the decision to say yes to our reality. God entrusted in us and within us the power and ability and the wherewithal to eventually wake up. It's like, if you're a parent and you had children and you always looked in on the children late at night before you turned in, and you would always just look in on them. And sometimes when you look in on your kids, you can tell that they are dreaming. You can tell that their dream is somewhat not pleasant, like someone or something is chasing after them, or they're falling off of a high cliff, or some strange idea, right? That's not loving. You can tell that they are, not having a pleasant dream. To the child, the dream is real. The boogeyman is real. The tiger and the lion and the bear is real and is chasing them. And if something don't save them, they're going to get eaten up. Or they're going to fall to their destruction. And this even happened in adults. It's not just children, but we still have dreams that are silly dreams, what I call them. It is still the mind trying to convince us that we're not good, that we deserve punishment, that ultimately, we are no longer remembered. In other words, we die and we no longer exist. That's what the residual thoughts of the belief in separation that still creates these kind of, images. They're not real images. The Course called them vain imaginings. But we only have those because there's still some residual of our belief in separation, our belief in punishment, our belief in an unloving Father, an unloving God, our belief that we are something that the world called us. And we embraced it as the truth, and it's not the truth. You're not a fallen being. You're not fallen. You're not unworthy. You're not a sinner. No. So on my decision, all salvation rests. So all my happiness rests on my decision. God placed that within my own decision, my own freedom to choose. What God is saying is that eventually that everyone would choose for their own happiness, their own salvation. Who would choose insanity? Who would choose death? Who would choose sickness and darkness and suffering and pain? Who would choose any other thing other than love? But what God knows is there is nothing but love. That any other alternative choice that we are contemplating, it's not real. He calls it an illusion. And so God, in his infinite wisdom, had placed within all of us the freedom to choose, to decide. And he says here that on my very own decision, my happiness rests, salvation rests. Because if we are one and one indeed with the Creator will not pronounce its own destruction. And so ultimately, God promised and God guaranteed that all of us at some point will wake up to the reality. How many more lifetimes will it take? How much more pain and sorrow will it take for us to come to a place like the prodigal son and say, I will go back home to my father? Because it is nothing out here in this world of dreams and illusions and vain imaginings. There's nothing out here that is good. And so my decision is my happiness. My choice to choose for reality is my happiness. And God trusted us enough to make that decision. It says, my decision, on my decision, all salvation rests. See, love is very confident and certain about itself. Love knows that there is nothing else but dreams and illusions and fantasies and vain imaginings. Love knows eventually you can't get away. There's nothing can separate you from the love of God. There's nothing that can separate you from love. Why? Because like the song said at the beginning of this session, truly, truly, I say unto you, the real you, which is love, loves you. Why? Because the real you is love and there is nothing else. So ultimately, all of us will come to ourselves and say yes to love. That's why Scripture instructs us that choose you this day whom you will serve. Are you going to serve the love that you are? Or are you going to assert this illusionary self that we have made up? Or are we going to observe this illusionary thought system, this thought system of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear that has produced this world? Who are you, or what are you going to choose? Choose you this day who you're going to serve. Jesus understood this. He said you can't serve two masters. You're going to either love one and hate the other. But there is no, because he understands there is no other. So we have to make up another. So we have to make up a world. We have to make up these bodies. We have to make up another purpose. We have to make up everything. That's what a prodigal son does. He goes on a journey from home to see if there's anything out there that God didn't give in creation. Is there anything out there that God is hiding from us? But God knows eventually what the son is going to come home. The son is going to come home. The daughter is going to come home. You're going to come home. I'm going to come home. All of us are going to come to our senses. All of us are going to come to reality, and not by any act of God that is punitive, or not by any act of God that is unloving. No. All the punitive measures, all the pain and suffering, like we said on a few sessions ago, we're doing it to ourselves. That is what we have come to the conclusion to, that if we're doing it to ourselves, we can stop doing it by making what? another decision, an irrevocable decision to say yes to the what will of God, to say yes to our reality as love. Truly, truly, I say unto you, the real you is love. This how we see ourselves? Is this the self-image that you have of yourself or of humanity as a whole? On my decision. That word decide comes from a word that means to cut away. So, in other words, when we make an irrevocable decision, we cut away all other options. We cut away all other alternatives. In other words, we come to realize there is no other alternative. There's only love. There's only God. And I am a part. I am a part of that love. It is one shared love. It is one shared creator that we all share. It is one shared life that we all share. It is the oneness of this one being that we all share together. And if there's anything missing or broken, if there's anyone missing or broken, then it's not complete. That's why God promised, guaranteed, swore when he could find no greater, he swore by himself and said, surely love remains as it is. What I created, it remains as it is. The kingdom of God, it remains as it is, the perfection that it is, and that we are part of that. And we could find no one greater, no entity greater than himself. He said, I'll swear by myself that this is so. I promise, I guarantee that all that I have created will eventually wake up and come home. I have lost nothing. It appears that everything is lost, everything is divided, everything is separate, everything is suffering, everything is dying. It seems that way. It seems that way. But none of it is reality. It's a temporary idea. It's a tiny mad idea. It's a dream that will eventually what? Disappear. I got some commentary here I like to read and share. It says it a little better than I do. It says in lesson 236, we saw that we alone rule our mind. That we're the what? We're the rulers of our kingdom. It's our decision. We have lived our decision. We sat in our own decisions. It said God has created us free to choose to listen to his voice alone, or the voice that speaks to God alone, and not to listen. We have the freedom to listen or not to listen. It says happiness does rest entirely on my decision. The message of today's lesson is that if this is true, God must have a great deal of trust in me. As humankind is typically pictured to be weak, to be vacillating back and forth, to be downright rebellious, sinners at the core, and totally unworthy. But if God placed his happiness in our hands and let it rest on our decision, then that opinion, that dark picture cannot be true. And it can't be true. The image that we have of ourselves, the image that we have of humanity, that is based on separation, deserving punishment, deserving whatever pain and suffering we experience, and being placed in an environment that we're surrounded by what appears to be darkness. He said, none of this can be true. That image of ourselves cannot be true. We made it up. It's not the image of God. It's not who God is, because we are who God is. He says, so this typical image that we have ourselves of being weak and vacillating and rebellious and sinners to the core and totally untrustworthy. He said it cannot be true if God placed within us, if God placed within us the freedom to choose happiness and salvation for ourselves. God has a tremendous amount of trust in what he has created. God knows what he had placed within us. And he knows eventually, like the prodigal son, that eventually he knew the prodigal son would come back home. Why? There's nowhere else to go. There's nothing outside of God. So even in our lifetime, even in our incarnation, even in our journey here to discover what we are here for and who we are here for and who we are, God knows that eventually you are going to discover your true self. He knows it. He guarantees it. And so he places trust in that. It's like, all of us, most of us got one of these called cell phone. And your cell phone has potential. It has abilities. It has functionalities that has been programmed within it. And so the manufacturer or the creator knows the capacity and the capability of the phone, what it can do. They call them smartphones. Why? Because they can do so much. They're so powerful. And most of us only use 5 to 10% of the capability of these phones. They can do so much more. They can do so much more. So the manufacturer, the creator of these phones, they know exactly what these phones can do, even though we don't use but a small portion of their capabilities. The creator knows what he placed within creation. The manufacturer of this phone knows what he placed within this phone and know what it can do. The user may not. In many cases, when something is not right, it's a user error. So likewise, God, who is the creator of all living things, he's the creator of you and me. God, the one that breathes all of us, knows our capacity, knows what he placed within us during creation, knows his program within us, our unlimited abilities, the infinite intelligence. God placed within us his very own self. So whatever God's capacity is, it is our capacity because we share it. And that's why God can guarantee that eventually, you will wake up to the reality of your true identification. And so that's why he placed the decision in us. He wants us to come to the conclusion that, yes, I am that I am. He wants us to come to the conclusion by ourselves, not through coercion, not through punishment, not through separation, but through what we call love, self-discovery, that we come to see ourselves as the self-aware, infinite, impersonal self that we are, and how great it is to be loved by this love. There's no greater love, as the writer said. What kind of love is this? As the writer says. He said we will come to know each other by what? By the love. And so let me finish reading this. I thought this was good commentary to share. God, I don't profess to know this stuff by myself. I am only sharing with you what's been shared with me in many different ways, many different forms. It says, but if God placed happiness in our hands and let it rest on our decision, then the dark picture cannot be true. If I were such an unworthy being, if humankind was so unreliable, God would never have put such enormous trust in us. Therefore, I must be worthy. I must be beloved of God indeed. And I must be steadfast in holiness as well. To sum it all up, if God trusts me, I must be worthy of that trust. And God does trust you because He has placed that decision in your hand. It isn't just my own happiness that rests on my decision. All happiness rests on it because what God created as one, the one family, the one being, the one sonship that we all share, the one life we all share, it's one. If one part remains separate or alone, it is not complete. That's what Jesus meant when He said, He leave the 99 and go and get the one. Why? Because we're incomplete if there's any exception. If there's anyone that is not born of God, if there's anyone that is not within the family of God, then God's family is not complete. And in God's family, there is no exceptions. There are no exceptions. There's only the one. If one part remains separate and alone, then the oneness is incomplete. See, the ego thought system would tell you, yeah, we're separate and there's only a few. And love's going to punish the rest. That is not a God idea. It says, yet God gave to us in certainty that we're okay, that we're safe. It says, if God is certain that we are safe, all of us are safe in the one hand, He must know something about us that we have forgotten. He knows me as I am. See that? God knows us as what? The I am. Why? Because that's what God created. And not as I have come to believe myself to be. God knows me not as the person I made myself up to be, but as the I am that He created. The trust He displays is amazing because the Son is not simply His creation. The Son is still a part of Him. We are a part of God. It said God has entrusted part of His very own being into our care in confidence of what our decision will be to freely, willingly choose to join with and enter into His love and His will. He knows that in the end, that all of us will not choose otherwise and cannot choose otherwise. Why? Because we discover there is no other choice. For He formed us as an extension of His very own love. And so, yes, we've been given this grand honor that comes from God only to make up our own mind, to embrace the truth that is true always. And so for that, we're going to make this affirmation, this declaration. To further bring our minds into the alignment of this truth. That's what we're doing. True perception. We're on this journey of seeing correctly, thinking correctly, being correctly, which is where our happiness and our joy and our peace reside. And so we affirm, Father, we affirm your oneness. We affirm your absoluteness. We affirm that we share this one life together, and that your trust in us has been so great. God has placed so much trust in us, even that we don't even have it in ourselves, but God has placed it because He knows what He has placed in Himself. Just like in this phone, The manufacturer of these companies back up these phones. They guarantee that they will do what they've been programmed to do because they know what they placed in it. They know the programming. God knows what he programmed you to be. Exactly what he is. And so God has confidence in his very own self. God trusts in himself. And so God trusts in you and me. And so because God trusts in us and has given us such a great trust, we must be worthy. We must be worthy. And we recognize that our Creator created us and knows us as we are, knows us as the I am. And yet our Creator placed our happiness and our salvation in the hands of what he created. God placed his trust in creation to make the right decision and to let us rest on this decision. We must be beloved of our Father indeed. We must be beloved with the kind of trust that God has entrusted us with. We must be the beloved, and we are. We are the beloved. And we must be steadfast in holiness as well. We are. You are the holy home of God. Paul said it this way in Ephesians, that we should be holy and without blame before God. How? In love. That is who you are. This is your reality. Steadfast in holiness. Holiness basically means that we're complete. We're whole. There's nothing missing and broken in us. That the Father would give us in certainty that he is safe, that we are safe, and all humanity is safe, who still is part of the Creator. We remain as God created us. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. Nothing, absolutely, positively nothing. Not even our own dream of being separate from God. Not even our own made up world, our own made up thought system, our own made up idea about who we are, our own wrong self-image about who we are. None of that can separate us from the love. We can only experience that in a dream. We're talking about a certainty here that we can be assured of. That we are safe, that we are at home in God. In fact, God said that what? Nothing has really happened. We remain as he created us. We remain the holy home of God. That this journey that we appear to be on, it is a journey without a distance. That we haven't gone anywhere. We've just fallen asleep. He just simply await our awakening. It's just that simple. Happiness, salvation, it's not a doing, but it's but a recognition. We just recognize that we were where? That we were caught up in a dream, a vain imagining of being separate, of being something other than. But in reality, we remain as God created us. And we're still a part of this one self that we share with God and each other. That oneness has not been destroyed. That heaven has not been broken up. That love has not been conquered. That death has not reigned supreme. But as it was in the beginning, it is now and forever shall be. Nothing has changed. We are God's loving creation, and it can never be altered. We are the unalterable. We are the changeless. One self that we share with God. And so, again, today, we pause. We take a great pause. We say, whoa, mind. Whoa, mind. Hold a minute. Wait a minute. We pause to think how much our Father loves us, how much confidence God has in His creation. We pause to think about the great confidence. We pause to think about the great responsibility. We pause to think about this great trust that God has in us. And He wants us to have this trust in ourselves. God trusts us. Because what? God is us. He trusts Himself. Ultimately, eventually, some point, we're gonna wake up to that and say, "Yes, Father." And now is the greatest time to affirm that. There is no time, but there's no greater time than now. There is no other time than now. The past is gone. The future, you can't live forward. That's why, the writer picked up on it. He said, now faith is. Now the decision is. Now the choice is. Now, right now. Let's get this straight right now. And so again, today, we pause to think how much our Father loves us. We are the beloved of God. You are the beloved of God. And how dear that His creation, how dear humanity, which was created by His love, remains to Him who love is made complete in us. In other words, God is made complete in us. Not without us, but in us. The writer in the New Testament in Colossians says, we are complete in Him. Or he could say it another way. We are complete as Him. This is the self-image that we should have of ourselves. And not the self-image of a weak and frail and separated and fearful form, time-constrained being. But the self-image that we should hold of ourselves is that of an infinite self that is not personal, but it is impersonal, that is self-aware of the divine nature that it is, self-aware that the love that we share, self-aware of the happiness that is an aspect of our reality. And so we decide, we make that decision in every moment for this happiness, for this salvation. And we rest in that. And with that, I rest my case on today's idea, on our decision. All happiness rest, not just us individually, but all creation of God. And God entrusted us with that decision. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that amazing? That's why they said it's amazing grace. And it sure sounds sweet to me. How sweet it is to be loved by Him. Thank you so much for being with me today. It's a great day. Go out and enjoy the happiness and the joy and the peace that we all share, and share it with all humanity. Share it with all humanity. You will find others that are not there, but their eyes will be open as they see the light displayed in you. Do it. That is our function. That is our purpose. Thank you so much. We'll be back on tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye bye.